The film begins with a boy going with a nun to an orphanage. At that time, the boy seemed happy because he thought he would be taken care of there. But once he went inside, it turned out that it wasn't a normal home for kids without parents. Instead, it was a place where kids were kept against their will, and their insides were going to be sold. Then we meet a young man named Petrus who was also being held there. Petrus reassured the boy not to be scared because he would rescue him. But just then, the people in charge of the home came and took Petrus away because it was his turn to have his insides taken out. At that time, Petrus was given medicine to make him sleepy and was going to have surgery by a doctor. But there was a new nurse pretending to be someone else, and her name was Alpha. Meanwhile, the boss of the home just brought a person who wants to buy Petrus' organs. This buyer looks old and is going to watch as Petrus is about to do the surgery. When they were about to start, the old man suddenly hit the boss. It turns out the old man was also pretending, and his name was Taupan. Surprisingly, Taupan, Petrus, and Alpha were working together to get rid of the bad people there. After beating the bad guys, Taupan and the others were going to leave, but there were soldiers outside waiting to stop them. Right away, Taupan asked for help from a sniper named Django, who was the best sniper in Southeast Asia and part of Taupan's team. Long story short, the four of them defeated the bad guys and saved the children who were kept there. Taupan, Django, Alpha, and Petrus are tough killers known as the Big Four. Soon after, their leader, who they consider as their father, named Petrus, came to pick them up. The scene changes to a woman named Dena, who is getting ready for a photo shoot in a studio. Dena looks upset because her dad hasn't shown up, even though he's the one who wanted the photos. Finally, her dad, Petrus, arrives. It's revealed that Petrus is the leader of the Big Four group. Later that evening, Dena is still mad at Petrus for always being busy with his own things. She didn't know he was the leader of the Big Four. A while later, Petrus meets with Taupan, Django, Alpha, and Petrus, considering them as his own children. News spreads about their actions earlier that day. A police chief named Hassan vows to arrest the Big Four despite their help in uncovering crimes. He refuses to accept their aid because they acted alone. Petrus then tells his children that he's quitting being the chief assassin. At first, the Big Four are shocked and disappointed, but Petrus explains that he feels ashamed for being a criminal, while Dena has become a police officer. Surprisingly, Hassan, the police chief, is revealed to be Petrus' good friend. The next morning, Petrus is getting ready to attend Dena's police inauguration. He feels uneasy because he senses someone watching him from outside. Checking, he finds it's his neighbor, who claims to be escorting a delivery person to Petrus' house. Relieved, Petrus recalls ordering flowers for Dena's event. However, when the courier arrives, it turns out to be the one who intends to harm Petrus, and tragically, Petrus dies. Meanwhile, Dena is deeply disappointed by her father's absence at her inauguration. Unaware of Petrus' death, she remains upset. Later that afternoon, Taupan arrives at Petrus' house to return a hat he left behind. Upon discovering Petrus dead, Taupan, as his adoptive son, is shocked. Soon after, Dena returns home and sees Taupan wearing the hat, mistaking him for her father's killer. There, Dena grabbed a nearby weapon and fired at Taupan before he fled. Long story short, the Big Four were heartbroken after Taupan informed them of Petrus' death. At that time, Taupan urged them to leave as their enemies were surely targeting them too. 3 years later, Dena is still trying to catch the person she believes is Taupan. She now lives alone in an apartment. At the police station, her commander suggests she take some time off. Initially, Dena refuses, wanting to keep working, but her commander insists. He even has posters of vacation spots prepared for her to consider. While at home, Dena accidentally noticed a holiday villa called Pyrenees on a poster given by her commander. She remembered that Petrus often visited this villa. Looking at a photo, she saw Petrus with 4 children, suspecting one of them as their father's killer. The next morning, Dena asked Hassan about the 4 children in the photo, but he didn't know them. The scene shifts to a beautiful island, showing Taupan now working as a receptionist at the Pyrenees villa. When Dena suddenly visits, Taupan quickly changes and warmly welcomes her. Afterwards, Dena showed Taupun a photo of Petrus, asking if he knew him, but Taupun shook his head, claiming he didn't. Then she asked if he knew the 4 children in the photo, but Taupun still didn't recognize them, despite being one of them along with Django, Alpha, and Paler. Deciding to spend the night at the villa, Dena insisted, and Taupun couldn't refuse to avoid raising suspicion. While escorting her to her room, Taupun noticed 2 suspicious men and inquired if Dena was with someone else, to which she replied she came alone. He quickly excused himself to the lobby, telling Dena to rest. To keep Dena safe, Taupun confronted the men who were following her. Realizing their intentions, Taupun turned up the music to mask the sounds of the confrontation, then intervened and fought them off to protect Dena. Unexpectedly, Dena suddenly appeared downstairs, questioning how long Taupun had been working at the villa. She stumbled upon a photo of Petrus on the table, realizing Taupun had been lying to her. Taupun promised to explain and asked Dena to wait outside while he dealt with the 2 men. In brief, Taupun revealed that the 4 children in the photo were himself and his siblings, raised by Petrus as their own father. Learning this, Dena insisted on meeting her brothers, believing one of them killed Petrus. Taupun agreed to take her, starting with Django. Upon arrival, Django welcomed Dena warmly. He now posed as a fake healer, living near the forest's edge. Meanwhile, a group of mobsters led by Antonio Sandova finished off their rivals. Although Antonio's right-hand person informed him of an important request to eliminate the Big Four immediately. Back with Django, he mistakenly gave Dena a potion intended to make her feel better and calmer, but ended up causing her to hallucinate and behave strangely. Despite Django's effort to fix that, Dena's condition worsened, and she became chaotic. Soon after, Paler arrived, causing Dena to become even more frantic. Fortunately, Django used a stun gun to calm her down temporarily. Taupun then had to restrain Dena outside while they discussed how to help her. Although they were confused, Django believed the potion's effects were temporary, and Dena would soon recover. When they checked on Dena later, they discovered she had fled into the forest. Suddenly, they were attacked by Antonio's group, sent to eliminate them. Realizing Dena was in danger, Taupun rushed after her, while Django and Paler prepared to defend themselves against the attackers. Back with Taupun, he finds Dena held at gunpoint by Antonio's men and quickly rescues her. Now conscious, Dena, impressed by Taupun's bravery, demands he reveal his true identity at gunpoint. Taupun, however, postpones the explanation, focusing on saving Django and Paler first. Meanwhile, Django and Paler face pressure from Olo. There, Django reassures Paler and prepares to rescue him, but Paler decides to flee. Django then challenges Antonio to a duel, but Antonio, much stronger, easily overpowers him. As Antonio was about to kill Django, Taupun arrives, holding one of Antonio's men hostage. However, Antonio disregards his man's life and shoots him. Soon after, a fierce battle happened between Antonio and Taupun, with Antonio proving stronger. Surprisingly, Antonio reveals he was Petrus's first student and boasts of killing him, explaining his superior skills. Then, as Antonio was about to defeat Taupun, Paler, and Dena, arrived on a 3-wheeled motorcycle. Dena swiftly deployed a smoke bomb, making everyone's vision blur. At that time, Taupun seized the chance to escape with Django. Despite their getaway attempt, Antonio continued to pursue them. Fortunately, Taupun managed to fend off Antonio, allowing them to flee. Soon after, they go to a hut where Dena tended to Taupun's wounds. At that time, Dena accidentally discovered a gunshot wound on Taupun's back, realizing he was the one who killed her father. Enraged, she attacked him and fled, feeling betrayed. Shortly after, Paler pursued Dena and persuaded her to go to Alpha's place, believing Alpha could explain everything. After some persuasion, Dena agreed to go. Shortly after, Paler pursued Dena and persuaded her to go to Alpha's place, believing Alpha could explain everything. After some persuasion, Dena agreed to go. Meanwhile, Taupun and Django decided to visit an informant who was a friend of Petrus to uncover Antonio's true identity. The next morning, Petrus, and Dena were seen arriving at Alpha's place. After retiring from being a hitman, Alpha is now a traveling dangdut singer. On the other hand, Antonio now hires several brutal hitmen, and these hitmen are led by a man named Asep. Meanwhile, Taupan and Django had arrived at the informant's residence, and it turned out that the informant had also just expelled several of Antonio's men who wanted to riot in their area. Taupan also asked who Antonio really was because Antonio admitted that he had killed Petrus. In fact, before he died, Petrus whispered to Taupan that the one who killed him was named Sorrento. Upon hearing this, the informant revealed that Sorrento was actually Antonio Sandova's real name. He also shared information about Petrus' adopted children, one of whom was named Sorrento. The informant explained that Sorrento was Petrus' first adopted child, but he was too violent and uncontrollable, so Petrus had to expel him. After receiving this information, Taupan and Django left the informant with the file and returned to Alpha, who had informed Dena about everything. At that time, Dena looked very upset upon learning that her father was the leader of the Big Four, who was, in fact, a murderer. Alpha felt offended when her adoptive father was called a murderer, leading to an argument between them. Petrus attempted to intervene, but they were suddenly attacked. A group of assassins led by Asep, along with Antonio's men, launched the attack. Alpha instructed Petrus to rescue the trapped children while she and Dena fought against the attackers. Together, Alpha and Dena managed to defeat their enemies one by one. However, they were ambushed by Alo, leaving Dena defenseless. Fortunately, at that moment, Taupan and Django arrived and swiftly took Dena to the prepared ship. After they all got on the ship, Petrus was captured and would be kept as a hostage by Antonio. Antonio contacted Taupan using Petrus' phone, threatening to harm Petrus if they didn't come to Villa Perennes by tomorrow afternoon. In the evening, their ship stopped and Taupan and Dena approached. Dena apologized to Taupan for wrongly accusing him of her father's murder. Meanwhile, Django asked Alpha about the weapon he was assembling, which Alpha called the Fart Lucifer 3000, a large explosive. Long story short, they prepared to rescue Petrus. Soon after, a car arrived at Villa Perennes. Suddenly, Antonio and his men opened fire on it, but it turned out the car only contained a bomb. When it exploded, all of Antonio's men outside were killed instantly. Afterwards, Taupan, Dena, and Alpha swiftly entered and began dealing with Antonio's remaining men. Dena found herself in a struggle against Asep, the lead assassin, and had to confront him alone. Meanwhile, Taupan engaged in a fierce fight with Antonio. Downstairs, Alpha faced off against Alo. At that time, Dena was initially overwhelmed by Asep, but she managed to defeat him eventually. On the other hand, Alpha struggled against Alo until Django arrived to assist her. However, Django was quickly overpowered. Just as Alo was about to attack them with a bazooka, Django intervened. Meanwhile, Antonio was about to finish off Taupan when Dena intervened and shot him. Unfortunately, Antonio survived due to his bulletproof vest. He then threatened to kill Petrus if Taupan retaliated. Initially helpless, Taupan suddenly remembered Antonio's real name and began taunting him as Sorrento. Hearing that angered Antonio, and Petrus seized the opportunity to attack him. And then Antonio ended up falling from the window and died. After the fight, Dena thanked Taupan, but still intended to take legal action against him and the others. Turns out Dena had already called the police, planning to arrest Taupan. However, when she tried to handcuff him, Taupan surprised her by kissing her and then handcuffing her instead. He promised to visit and take care of her. In the end, the Big Four emerged from hiding after the police left. They got into a hidden car near the forest and left. Meanwhile, it was revealed that Hassan was involved in the incidents. At that time, Hassan answered to another boss, a legendary assassin known as Lady, whom he feared. The film ends. The moral lesson from this film is if your dad's a secret assassin, chances are family reunions will be more explosive than expected. Always RSVP with caution.